Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby. Let's join Mike and Kentucky Dave as they strive to be informative, entertaining, and help you keep your modeling mojo alive.
All right, Kentucky Dave, episode 143. We're finally going to do this.
Yes, that's right. And instead of being the end of June, it's the beginning of July.
That's right. And it's just kind of like we said in the 12-minute model sphere, it's been a little dodgy the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, hopefully there's something up in your model sphere given all this busyness.
Well, there are a couple of things. One, as people who've watched on the dojo have found out, I finally finished my pool project, getting the stairs sanded and painted and all that. So the pool has been filled, and just in time for certain individuals to show up on July 4th for a cookout and pool party.
All right. Looking forward to it.
It's modeling adjacent because my partner in podcast crime is going to bring his family, and I'm going to once again try the impossible feat of feeding to Phil 2 teenage boys.
One's 21 now.
Oh, God, yeah, I know. Isn't it? It's amazing.
And he swims about 1 million laps a week, too.
Well, the pool's there and waiting for him, and decently warm, too. So,
what about on the model front and the hobby front? You got much going on?
On the model front, obviously, I'm on crunch time on getting stuff done for the Nats, and we'll talk about that in the Benchtop halftime report. But in related Nationals news, I did get registered for the Nationals. I do believe pre-registration is now closed, but I did manage to get pre-registered. In addition, we finally nailed down our accommodations at the Nationals. We're going to do a little something different this year, and I'm looking forward to it. It's only 5 weeks. 5 weeks away.
It's close.
I know.
Be here before we know it.
It is going to be here before we know it. And finally, I have spent a bunch of time in the last 2 weeks interacting with our listeners, whether it be on the dojo or getting DMs from them or text. Some of our listeners I text with or communicate in other form or fashion. And work has kind of sucked lately. Just between you, me, and the wall. Don't tell my employers I've said this, but work kind of sucked lately. And there is nothing better in the middle of the day when I'm grinding it out and not particularly happy about the work at the moment, to get a DM or to stop and go through the dojo and see a really great post. And I'll tell you what, that has really added to my model sphere. So I want to thank everybody who's interacted with me lately on that front. So has your model sphere been anything but cutting the yard?
Yeah, you've been in on the conversation to some degree. We've got a lot of stuff we're lining up for the next couple months and doing a little bit better job with our forward planning than we've done.
Trying.
We do pretty good. No, we got some good things on the horizon. And
yes, we do.
Getting everybody lined up to do that is a little bit of a juggle, but not too bad.
It takes a little time, it takes a little effort, but we seem to be doing well. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up.
We do. So planning, and getting those folks lined up. So that's what I've been doing.
Are you about ready for the Nationals?
I hope so. I just shot an order of our secret project up to our secret contractor to to get our secret surprise finished up for the Nationals. So just have to stop by the table and see what we're talking about. We're not going to say until then, but it's something that's been requested with some frequency. So some folks are going to be happy. That said, I also got the vendor table paid out and got pre-registered. So
good.
All my ducks are in a row as well. So
all right. Well, I can't wait, man. It's going to be here. It's going to be here before you know it.
That's right. It will.
So, Mike, since we're doing a full episode, finally, do you have a modeling fluid in front of you?
I do.
What do you have?
Well, I went out and got it tonight, in fact.
Oh, wow.
Well, Don Gilman, listener, he's from Texas, I believe.
Yep.
Posted on the dojo. He was doing an Old Forester flight and had a couple of the standard labels, then the whole, I can't remember, it was the Whiskey Rose series or Prohibition series. I can't, the dated bottles.
Right.
I went out and got the favorite of mine out of that line, the
1920.
The 1920 again.
Oh, God, that's good stuff.
So it's pretty good. It's been a while since I've had it, so I gotta be careful, or I might be slurring my words later.
Tread lightly. That one's on the high end.
Yeah, it's a moderate pour with a big old rock. So
good.
We're good. What about you, man?
Well, I've got kind of a double this evening. One, the beer is Krampusnacht, which is a Schwartz beer from Braumeister Brewing up in Canada. This is another one of the ones that Evan McCallum gave to us at Hamilton. And I'm pouring it into a glass supplied to us by one of the listeners, Michael Grisbin, who lives in England, has the most German-sounding name in the world, yet apparently originally came from the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And there is a brewery called Aviator Brewing Company in Raleigh. And he sent a little care package of 2 of their glasses and 2 T-shirts. So I have poured the Krampusnacht into the Aviator Brewing Company glass, and I will tell you, it is definitely a Schwartz beer. Yep, definitely a Schwartz beer. You can taste the malt. And boy, it got some body to it. This will be interesting as we go through the night.
I bet so.
It's got some real body to it. Evan really liked that one, he said. So
okay.
I'll be interested to see how it develops as our night goes on. And when you show up Friday, I'll have the glass and the T-shirt from Michael for you to pick up.
All right. Well, that'll give me more incentive to get there, Dave.
That's right. Like you need it any more than my bright smiling face.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Well, the mailbag's in pretty good shape, especially since we got stuff coming from multiple channels now.
Yes, really.
Well, the first one up is in response to, there was the best gift ever question we got, and then also a call to call out someone in our community who has done you a solid.
Yep.
Well, this is from the good Dr. David Gelmacher.
Mm-hmm.
He tells a story that I'm going to tell. I'm going to work my way through this, and you'll probably remember it, but just hold your water till we get to the end. He says when his son was about 4 or 5, he, quote unquote, gave him a really nice Revell 72nd scale F89 Scorpion, I think.
Mm-hmm.
In the checkerboard markings on the tail and wing pods.
Yep.
And it didn't survive one of his moves. So in 2016, his local club had a Build a Revell kit challenge. His thoughts went pretty quickly to redoing that one. Well, he found a copy of the kit at a good price, but it was a different boxing, had different scheme in it.
Mm-hmm.
So he posted it to the 72nd scale modelers forum with his username.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that you responded. He'd met you through Jim Bates.
Yes.
And you could provide it for $5. And then when he sent his real name, not his handle for the forum and his address, he says, "Oh, I didn't know it was you. Forget the $5." So he's reliving that memory.
That is an absolutely 100% true story. And this was back when I knew of Dr. Gelmacher, but I didn't really know Dr. Gelmacher just other than through Jim. And I remember that one. In fact, I still have the F-89 kit, less the decals, in my stash.
Probably got a sheet of decals in your
Oh,
stash.
I've got like 4 sheets of decals, so I'm covered.
Well, he says that story predates the podcast by about 3.5 years. So
It does.
But you're still helping each other out.
Yes. In fact, I got decals from him not too long ago, so he's paying it forward or paying it back.
Mojovian Special Agent 003, Brandon Jacob, sent us a rather lengthy email in response to all the goings on about stash reduction and the big book collection. That's been an interesting topic.
Yes.
Well, you know, he and his friend Rick Cotton down there in Texas have been getting into the stash flipping business,
Right.
liquidation business. And, you know, this is a long email. And I think once we get the next phase of the website done, this would make a very nice blog post kind of article. So I'm just going to hit a couple of high points. Then I'm going to touch base with Brandon to see if maybe a little bit could be fleshed out here and maybe turn this into something else, because it's really good. A couple of points to consider. The high points of this is, he says your plans should not only include with what to do with your stash, but to also remind the person or persons who are going to have to disperse this collection that it's okay.
Yeah.
That they don't need to wrestle with not being able to bear selling off what their late spouse's joy came from.
Right.
But to, you know, go ahead and let them know it's okay. In the end, it's plastic in a cardboard box.
Yep. No, that is a very good point.
And the other one is, he encourages folks to guard against a family member pops on eBay and sees a 30-year-old Tamiya kit selling for $50 as an asking price.
Yeah.
And the widow or family gets sold down this golden road of unlimited fortunes, as he puts it, that they've got this big thing that's got 1,000 kits in it and they're all worth between $40 and $50.
Yeah.
And get the $sign eyeballs. Dispersing this kind of a collection and getting anything close to a market price for it is a long, tall order.
Yeah.
So, you know, they don't even sell the stuff on eBay. They like to do the show price thing and blow it out at shows. And, you know, I'm sure they're making some on the side, but, you know, they're not getting a lot of money for these kits.
Right.
So they're probably not giving a lot of money for these kits. And that's what it takes to make these things go away, is somebody being realistic about the secondary market value of most of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now there are exceptions.
Oh yeah, no, they're the ultra rare kits and stuff like that.
And the highly desirable ones that maybe, you know, they're going to command a price, but by and large, this stuff depreciates rather precipitously.
It does indeed.
So Brandon, if you're listening, think about what I said about turning this article into something else, because I think you're onto something. Well, I was going to say, he's in the kind of brokers businesses for sale.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's kind of got a little knowledge in this regard.
Yeah.
Eric Kintzer wrote in and he gave us a wheel topic, which I'm going to not reveal, but it's a good one. And we thank him for that. We encourage anybody else who has a topic they think would be good for either the Wheel of Accidental Wisdom or even our Shop Talk episodes. Could be used either place, really.
Yeah. We need to do it. We need to do another wheel episode.
It's not been too long. We got a little ways to go before we do another one, but it's going to be a Shop Talk about every month. So
yeah,
we can certainly populate that list as well. Up next, Bruce McRae wrote us back, Dave. And he's had quite the adventure on his spring model show tour of the United States. And Bruce, I sent you a reply, and get back with me and see about when we can get you back on the show, because there's a lot to tell here, and we'd like to be the ones to help you do it. So
it's kind of the modeling version of National Lampoon's Vacation.
In retrospect, yes.
Yeah.
But we'll let him tell it and what it means to him.
It's one of those things that, looking back on it, it's funny now.
I don't know. He may still have trauma from it.
That's true. That's true. I need a sip of beer.
Charles Rice has informed us of the Low Country Nationals, July 19th. So that one's coming up quick. It is a model show held in North Charleston area, South Carolina, the Trident Technical College. And that's going to be, again, July 19th, 2025. $5 entry for non-participants. $10 for the first 5 models, $1 each additional model after that. No charge for display only. So they're doing display only.
That's great.
And he says previous first place winners can enter the best of the best category. Registration is 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. Day of the show. Judging noon to 1. Awards at 2. And there's vendor tables available for $25 a pop, and the sponsorships available for $25 per class. I'm assuming those are still available. I really don't know, but you can get all the information at www.charlestonmodelers.com. That's one word, Charleston Modelers. So there's a show for summer, a rare summer show.
Yeah.
Well, they're not terribly rare, but they're not as common as the spring and fall for sure. From Cape Coral, Florida, Michael Turner's written in and wants to know about this bottle of 1792 he won.
Oh, well, it's terrible. Send it here. I'll take it off your hands.
There you go. Yes, I've had this. Is it exceptional? I don't remember. It's good.
It's good. I can tell you it's good.
I think it's one of Barton's higher levels,
end,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy it. You can answer that question yourself.
Yep.
See if you think it's drinkable.
Yep.
We think so. Chris Veitch, I'm going to give the German pronunciation of that name, although he's from Sunderland, UK. He sent me, or us actually, in regards to Shop Talk in episode 142, I'd mentioned, we talked about plans for getting better, and I mentioned my shop tools, my machine tools.
Yes.
A lot to go through here, and I'm going to parse through this and list some of it to the dojo. But he sent me a lot of resources for getting up to speed on this kind of stuff and small starter projects. So a lot of helpful stuff.
Well, cool.
He didn't send me any time, though.
Yeah, well.
He must be out.
I'm looking for a bottle of Mr. Modeling time.
That's right.
It makes, it's rarer than unicorn tears.
Well, Chris, thanks for that. I took just a quick look at some of this stuff, but you sent me several links here, and I'm going to take your advice on starting with a few simple things, and once I get to it, I'll look into some of these books and resources, because that's exactly what I needed. Well, in addition to email, we've got several have come through our message and voicemail link.
Mm-hmm.
First up's Arthur Garanazzo, and he's from Brazil, and I think he wrote in a long time ago. I'm not going to try his town name.
Brazil.
It's Brazil, but
yes.
Portuguese has a lot of vowel modifications that I don't understand. So,
yep.
Well, he enjoyed the Squadron Vendor Spotlight again with Brandon, and it's interesting to see the company view of the hobby, and he was really curious about the Eagle Club and the National Contest exclusives, even though he's probably not going to be able to participate being in Brazil, but he just thought those were really good ideas to spur the business and get people involved in the hobby. So he enjoyed it. Glad to hear it. Thank you for the comments, Arthur. Also from the feedback link is Aaron Bennett. And again, he's a huge Squadron supporter. He's been a faithful customer for more than 30 years, and he's just really excited to see what Brandon's done with the company.
Completely agree.
And really looking forward to that. So he's glad to see his old friend Squadron still kicking it down the road, thanks to Brandon and company.
It brings a smile to my face every time I go to their website, just because of the fact that there's that nostalgia that you get the tingles for.
I know it's got this nostalgic brand, but he's certainly keeping up with the times. That's for sure.
Yes, absolutely. That website's dynamic.
Finally, from my side of things, the email and the feedback link is Peter Kwong, and he wanted to comment about episode 141 Shop Talk, our discussion about organization.
Mm-hmm.
And he cleaned up his workbench by getting a lot of these mini Sterilite sliding drawer things.
Yep.
That you can stack.
Yep.
At least as high as your ceiling is sometimes.
Yep.
So he recommends those to use up some vertical space and free up the horizontal for your work and get things a lot tidier, like his sanding sticks are now in one place instead of in several containers and soup cans on the workbench. So it's a good idea.
Yeah, I've got 9. I'm sitting here looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 drawers of those myself in my hobby room.
And then one of the other shop talks, I think still episode 141 or 2, he has been reducing his stash for quite a number of years, and it really picked up after he had a modeling friend suddenly pass away, and he had to help their partner sell the stash of model kits and model railroad stuff. And he doesn't buy a whole lot much these days except tools and accessories, and tends to buy fewer kits, mostly newer stuff that he finds interesting. But yeah, it's something definitely on his mind, and recommends folks keep that in check.
And there is nothing that will focus your mind, I think, on that subject. People can talk to you all they want to about it, but the first time you experience it, where, you go like I did to the widow's house for trying to help get rid of those books, or you have a modeling friend who passes on and you have to go over and help do something with the collection of both built and unbuilt kits, it really does make you come back home and go look around and say, okay, I need to do something here. If I croak tomorrow, this would be a disaster. So I've got to do something. And I'm slowly doing it.
Well, and he gives us a couple of shop talk topics, and one of these is going to be really fun to talk about with Bob Bear. So hopefully we can pull that off and get Bob in here for shop talk in our next episode. And this will be a good one.
Well, great.
Well, Dave, from the email and feedback link side of things, that's it for me.
Well, from the DM and text message and that side of things, I've got a number of things. One, our good friend Jeff Groves, Inch High Guy. Inch and I text each other a fair amount during the week on different topics. And he texted me to thank us for recommending the God Hand sprue cutters. And he was sitting there modeling and marveling at how good they were at flush cutting and, leaving little or no sprue attachment gate. He seconded my idea that it's one of those tools that's expensive, but it is actually worth what the cost is. And so it's kind of nice to hear from him that that recommendation resonated with him, and he got one and he appreciates it. Rob Morales reached out. Rob is a friend of Mike Idacavage's, and he's going to a model show where there is a vendor who has a lot of different airline decals. And he remembers me talking about the Piedmont Friendship F-27, the Fokker F-27. And he contacted me and offered to look out at that show to see if indeed that vendor had 72nd scale Piedmont decals for that kit. And if he does, well, you know me, I can't resist a decal sheet. So hopefully he'll find one, and then I'll have another decal sheet to deal with, but not a bad problem.
No.
Christian Gurney reached out to us, Bases by Bill. Christian wanted to let us know they're about to release 3 new bases, 2 Soviet-style air bases, concrete tarmac style bases, and then additionally they're doing a modern U.S. carrier base. And so they'll have all 3 of those out. Next, we have a listener who goes by the Facebook name of Wesley Scale Models, who's in South Africa, and reached out to tell us that he was listening in South Africa, which was kind of nice. Mike and I, we can actually go and look at some of the statistics and tell where listeners are by continent and sometimes even by country and sometimes granularly even by city. But it's kind of nice to hear. I don't think we've ever interacted with our listener from South Africa before. And it's kind of nice for us to hear from folks who listen in the countries that we don't normally interact with. So it was nice of him to reach out and let us know he's in South Africa and he's listening. And I want to thank him for doing that. And, anybody else out there in unusual places, please reach out and let us know that the Plastic Model Mojo is reaching you, because that's kind of neat to know.
Well, if we could pick up Antarctica, I think we'll have them all.
Yeah, Antarctica's the one we don't seem to have any listeners there yet. Maybe we can get somebody down to the one of those stations down in the South Pole.
Be a good hobby to have down there.
There would be.
Get your stuff down there.
That's right. Yard work would not be your excuse. You mentioned Bob Bear, and I had recommended a couple of podcasts and YouTube channels on a previous episode. And one of them was a podcast called The Rest is History. And I recommended the 4-part series they did on Hannibal. And Bob listens to a lot of podcasts, kind of like me. And he seconded that recommendation. He also said that The Rest is History also does like a 4-part series on 1066 and on the Norman conquest of England. And he recommended both of those series as well worth listening to. So if you're looking for more podcasts after, of course, you're completely caught up on Plastic Model Mojo, The Rest is History and their 1066 Norman Conquest and Hannibal's 4-part series. Joe McCaslin, modeler, reached out, was interested in doing some 72nd scale U.S. Pearl Harbor subjects, and was looking for decal manufacturers who had models in that area or with those markings. And I pointed him to Starfighter decals.
Yeah, I was about to say, somebody makes...
Yep, Starfighter makes a sheet with like 4 or 5 different Pearl Harbor aircraft, U.S. aircraft, P-40, P-36, might even be a Wildcat or a Buffalo on there. I don't remember, but I pointed him to Starfighter to check out that particular sheet. If any other listeners know of any other manufacturers who do 72nd scale U.S. Pearl Harbor subjects, please let me know. Post it in the dojo and bring it to Joe McCaslin's attention. Our listener from across the pond, Chris Meddings, took friendly umbrage with my pronunciation of Suffolk in England. And he wrote to inform me that the correct pronunciation is Suffolk. And that's just like all the people who mispronounce Louisville, all the different ways to mispronounce Louisville. It irritates the ear of a native, so I understand why hearing me say Suffolk instead of Suffolk would bother him. So thank you for the correction. And that's the last one I have from the Facebook Messenger side.
Well, I'm sure Chris will forgive you.
I'm sure he will.
Well, if that's it, Dave, we want to remind folks to write into the show. This is our favorite segment, and got a lot of ways to do that now.
Yes, we do.
Email to plasticmodelmojo@gmail.com is a primary way to do it. And you can also send us a direct message through the Facebook Messenger app, or there's a feedback web link found in the show notes of this and every episode. So please take advantage of all those and send us some email, send us some listener mail, some feedback. We love it.
Reach out. We don't really care which way you do it. Just reach out. As I said, I love nothing better than the interaction I get with the listeners, with the community. So please do that. We'd always love to hear from you. As I always say, please rate this podcast on whatever podcasting app you're listening to. Give it 5 stars. You'll help us make the podcast more visible. In addition, the best way for us to continue to grow is for you to recommend our podcast to one of your modeling friends who isn't currently listening. So please recommend us to your modeling friends who aren't currently listening to either podcasts in general or Plastic Model Mojo in particular.
And don't forget, in addition to a feedback web link, we've also have a ratings web link in the show notes as well. So you can rate and comment on the podcast there too, and give it 5 stars. We sure appreciate it. In addition to the podcast, we got a lot of blog and YouTube friends out in the model sphere. You can check out all the other podcasts by going to www.modelpodcast.com. That's Model Podcast plural. It's a consortium website set up by Stuart Clark of the Scale Model Podcast up in Canada, and he's aggregated the banner links to all the current podcasts in the model sphere, and you can go there for a one-stop shop and check out some of the others. We also got a lot of YouTube friends out there and blog friends. Stephen Lee, Sprue Pie with Frets, has got a great blog that you can check out all his 72nd scale stuff for the most part, and some model railroad thrown in, and then just some general thinking about the hobby and what's going on sometimes. He's always got some pretty good content there.
Yep.
If you like 72nd scale, you've already mentioned Jeff Groves, the inch high guy. He's always got some batch builds going on or some interesting project, but again, it's always 72nd scale. If you're into the gentleman's scale, those two ought to get you down the road pretty far. Evan McCallum, Panzermeister 36, great YouTube channel on weathering armor, some build reviews, and even a model railroad subject thrown in for interest there every now and then too as well. So we'll cross over there. And we got Chris Wallace, model airplane maker. Chris has got a blog and a YouTube channel, and always fun to see what he's got going on.
And he builds in 48 scale, but we forgive him for that. And he does some beautiful stuff in 48 scale. Just amazing.
And finally, a scale model workshop from our friend Paul Budzik. Lots of great insight and wisdom to be found on his YouTube channel. So check all those out. You're going to get a lot of good stuff from him.
Finally, if you're not currently a member of IPMES USA, IPMES Canada, or whatever national organization in the nation you're listening to us from, please consider joining. The national IPMES organizations are a way for the volunteers in the hobby to help the hobby grow, not only in their country of origin, but they also facilitate communication between the different branches in the different countries. Also, if you are a fan of armor modeling or post-1900 figure modeling, consider joining the Armor Modeling and Preservation Society, AMPS. They're a great group of guys. They really are dedicated to the armor modeling hobby and are dedicated to making it better and sharing it widely. I say it almost each time we get to this point. If you can get to their nationals, which sadly Mike and I missed this year, next year's in South Bend. If you can get to the nationals, go to the AMPS nationals. I guarantee you'll have a great time.
Plastic Model Mojo is brought to you by Model Paint Solutions, your source for Harder and Steenbeck airbrushes, David Union power tools, and laboratory-grade mixing, measuring, and storage tools for use with all your model paints, be they acrylic, enamels, or lacquers. Check them out at www.modelpaintsolutions.com.
Well, Dave, we ran into our guest again up at Heritage Con.
Yes, I'm glad we finally were able to get him on.
Harvey Low's our guest tonight, and he recently returned from a lengthy trip to Japan, where he took in the Shizuoka Hobby Show and did some shopping around Tokyo and went to some museums and just had a really fabulous time. And Harvey agreed to come on and give us the ins and outs of his little trip and some pointers along the way if you might like to go to Japan and check out the hobby scene sometime. Well, Dave, over the years that we've been going to Heritage Con in particular, we've made one more Canadian friend that we've been wanting to get on the show for a while, and we've finally got around to that. We've got modeler Harvey Low with us tonight. Harvey, how are you doing?
I'm great, and greetings from the Great White North in Canada. Guys, it's a pleasure to be here.
Hopefully it's not white right now.
No, it's not. It's actually like 40 degrees Celsius, and I just came back from a Blue Jays game. It is very hot and humid in Toronto, Canada.
Well, I was going to say this is the 2 or 3 month stretch where you all in Canada get really nice weather, and taking in a Blue Jays game. That's a great way to spend an evening.
Yeah, well, today it was so hot that they closed the dome. They usually leave it open. But yeah, our winters are very, very white and very cold. It's a lot of snow. So I'm enjoying the day.
Good.
I wanted to have you on for a while, and Dave did too. And the reason for that, there's some modelers out there in the community that have been doing a lot of great things for a lot of my time in the hobby. I mean, they're already established. You know, we've had Paul Budzik on a number of times, folks like that. And, you know, Harvey, for me anyway, and I assume Dave too, we followed your builds and stuff for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And it's all just really impressive stuff all the time. And it's just thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, I feel honored. Thank you, guys. And I'm in good company. Let's just keep it at that.
So tell us, when did you start modeling? How did you get in? What do you like to build? How did you get to where you are now? Just give us the couple of minute Harvey Low.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like anybody, I started off really young, right? So I'm in my early 60s and grew up in the genre of, 1960s Battle of Britain, Battle of the Bulge, where a lot of the war veterans were then become movie actors, and Audie Murphy and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of our generation just got into that stuff, right? And
Yep.
I did my first, it was an Airfix bullfighter that I had to have my neighbor help me build when I was, I think, 6 or 8. And then, of course, school kicks in, everything kicks in. I did a lot of builds as a kid with my neighbor friend up the street, and we would ride to the local hobby shop and buy an Airfix kit. And in those days, Airfix prices were based on their series. So
Yep.
a Series 1 kit would be $1. The
Yep.
Series 2 kit, that's how far back I go. And then, you go to university, you get your career off the ground. The only time I ever stopped is when I went to university and dating. When I met my wife, I didn't build much models.
Yeah.
And then I started up again after I entered my career. And I basically I started off as a figure modeler, and then I quickly turned to military and started with aircraft tanks. But now lately, when you follow my work, my focus is primarily on the bad guys. I like World War II Italian, and in particular, I like World War II Japanese. So that's my focus now, although I do the odd pieces here and there. And I guess now that I'm got into early retirement, basically all I do now is build models, do things, articles for magazines, and I build for clients. And that's the journey. And now it's taken me finally to a relaxed time where I can kind of do what I want. And I'm gratified that I can do models without any type of hitches.
Well, you kind of undersold yourself there. You talked about, I build Italian or I build Japanese, but it's not like you're going and getting a Hasegawa or a Tamiya kit and putting it together. What you like to do is seek out, or at least in some of your builds lately, seek out the weirdest resin, vacuform, things that were, to call them cottage industry kits, undersells cottage industry a whole lot.
Okay, you caught me. Well, maybe this is, yes, I love scratch building. I got inspired by, the early scratch built models by George Lee at IPMS Nationals.
Oh,
right?
yes.
I just remember those and go, wow, that's different. And it's kind of like getting hit by a Big Mac truck. And then you got to say, all right, building models is fun. But I kind of get a kick out of guys going, well, what kit is that? Well, it ain't a kit. Or where'd you get that? Oh, I kind of did it on the side with bits of this and that. And I kind of like doing things that are different. So Dave, you're right. I love scratch building. I love super detailing. I'm old school, so I do a lot of my own resin casting. I carve wood molds, and I just like to do weird stuff. Just to put it in perspective, in this year, 2025, I think I'm up to about five completed, of which all of them are pretty well scratch builds or very mixed bag conversions, with only one kit recently that I did which was almost out of the box, was that Great Fine Mold Zero. But the rest were all, you can get into it in a little while, the rest were all scratch builds or conversions. But yes, I love the weird stuff. If I have to build a kit, like if it's a Sherman, it's got to be, well, what's different? I got to do a different angle. So I'm tinkering, doing a half decent Sherman from the movie Fury, so it's something different. But yeah, you're right. I love doing weird stuff and oddball stuff.
Well, that's probably why I like to follow your work.
Well, and you do have some things in common with Mike, where you'll take a kit, to call it a kit is sometimes stretching it, and then you'll look at it and you'll go, well, I can use this and this and this.
Right.
But then, well, the perfect example is a year or two ago, you did a U.S. World War II submarine, the S-44.
Oh, yes, right, yes.
The basis of which was it combat models?
Yes, sir. It was a old combat vacuum form, yeah.
I was going to say, it was a combat models vacuum form, and for anybody who's ever seen combat models, you'll understand where basic doesn't begin to sum it up. And I think by the end of that build, you only had one small, well, not small, but one real piece that was from the combat models vacuum form.
Yes, Dave, because the combat models was so old that the vacuum form had deteriorated. Do you ever start a kit going, hey, man, this is going to be an easy one? And then it doesn't, right? Because, oh, no, not even an old vacuum form kit's going to hold up. But yeah, I had to, remold it in wood and all that. Oh, by the way, that kit I just recently sold. And,
did you really? I hope it got a good home.
It got a very good home, and so I'm very happy with the new owner, and I'm very happy with the fact that it's got a great home. So yeah, but yeah, to go back to these difficult builds, I like to resurrect old stuff, and if I can take an old vacuum form kit and do that, then that's the challenge. Now I do need palette cleansers. And I know that a lot of guys talk about palette cleansers. I heard Evan talking about some that he's working on. So that's why I did the Fine Molds Japanese Zero, which
choice.
Was almost right out of the box, and it's finally finished. So that was a nice. Now I'm back to scratch building and modifying stuff.
What are you currently working on?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to get my mojo back in armor, because I've been literally doing aircraft for, oh my God, the last 3-4 years, partly because a lot of the aircraft I do are for clients. And before I answer that question, it just popped in my mind. One of the builds I had to do on a quick timeline was I was honored to get, I'll make a long story short. I'm in the military, and I get this email from an aide-de-camp. Now, when you're in the military and you get an email, from the aide-de-camp, you're either in trouble or something's good, right?
Right.
And so they asked me, hey, Harvey, we know you build models. Can you build a model for General Richard Romer for his 100th birthday? And I go, oh, like what kind of model? And they said, well, he flew Mustangs during World War II and D-Day. And so I said, yeah, of course I would. And so that took about 6 months, because I didn't know anything about Mustangs. So I asked a whole bunch of friends, went on the internet, and I had to, because, if you build something, you want to do it right if it's for the pilot that actually flew it.
Right. The one guy who really will know whether that's the right color.
Oh, and by the way, now that you mentioned that, I was doing the decided to do a 132nd because, he could see it and all the
Right.
details. He flew a 170, he flew a Mustang 1 with the Canadian Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a photo recon, so there were certain changes to, without getting into the details. And when I looked at, because they sent me pictures, the military sent me some archival photos of his aircraft. It was pretty dirty, and I talked to him. they told me it was a secret. Don't let on like you're building a model for his birthday. So I called him and you're chatting. Oh, by the way, you flew Mustangs. Yeah. Where'd you fly them? And so he said they flew them off front bases in France right after the D-Day landings, and they had no runways, basically a mud field.
Right.
And they got really dirty. So I really dirtied up this thing. And when you say they know, so when we brought it out to him, the first day we brought it out to him, it was at a small gathering, a private gathering at Canadian Forces Base Borden, which is north of Toronto. He didn't know what was happening. I presented the model to him, and I tell you guys, he started to cry, and he said, "This is exactly how I remember, and it's like I'm 20 years old again."
Wow.
Now, how can that, like, so did I do an okay job? Well, if he's crying, I think I did.
Yeah. You can't beat a memory like that.
No. And that guy's got a sharp memory. So I don't want to belay the point, but I put D-Day stripes on it, and I asked him on 3 occasions. He said the D-Day stripes were over the entire wing. Yet with all due respect, every discussion group on the web said that Canadian Mustangs did not have D-Day stripes over the whole wing. And he said, "Oh, no, mine did. And they used brooms and mops to put them on." He said that 3 times to me. So you're hearing it from the pilot. That's what I put it on. But to get back to, why I've been doing aircraft, it's projects like that. Now, turning to answer your question, what I'm working on now, just in a quick nutshell, I am almost finished a Breda 61. You guys know what that is? Test time?
Test time.
Breda 61. It's a vehicle. It's a military vehicle.
Breda 61.
You give up?
I give up. I don't know.
I'm betting a truck, but
it's actually half track. It is the Italian version of the German STKFZ7 half track.
Ah,
and
okay.
It's the front end's completely different, new engine. The drive is on the right side instead of the left side. So I'm cobbling together an old Creel Models resin bonnet onto a Dragon rear part. So I'm working on that. I'm working on an Indian pattern 135th British armored car. There's nobody that makes a kit of this except a pretty bad resin one from a defunct model company called IMA.
That has Harvey Low written all over.
Oh, it's a tough build, but who's got an Indian pattern? Well, I at least have one in my collection. And lastly, believe it or not, I am working on a Matchbox GU 188 out of the box.
Oh my gosh, why?
It's palate cleanser.
You guys did a great episode with the folks Kevin and Janelle from Mask.
Yeah.
Well, the time I met you guys at Heritage Con, I was sitting right next to their vendor table because I was vending.
You're
and
right.
We got to know each other.
I remember that. In fact, I bought some stuff from you.
Yeah. Oh, you did? I hope all the parts were there.
I think so.
So I was talking to Kevin and Janelle, and they said, "Harvey, what are you working on?" And I said, "Well, what I'd like to do is do an old vintage kit." And they said, "Which one?" I said, "You know what? I've always liked the JU 188. I did it as a kid. I'd like to do it again, but there's no canopy mask, hint, hint." Well, guess what? They had a set made in a month. I don't know how they do it. And they sent me 3 of them, and they said, and so I'm doing that, and I'm probably going to turn it into a very quick article for perhaps Fine Scale on just how to put new life into an old kit. And that's my palate cleanser with some of the other stuff I'm working on.
I'm still stuck at the 2 subpar resin makers you just rattled off.
Oh, by the way, you talk about cutting. It just I hope I'm not making it longer than necessary in this show, but I got to tell you a funny story. So I get sometimes my wife buys me these kits, for a birthday, Christmas. So she got me an ICM 148 Key 21 Sally.
Nice.
And I thought, well, Sally's great, but I want a Key 57 Topsy.
Yeah.
Now, you guys know the difference between a Key 21 and a Key 57. A Topsy is the transport.
Right.
But the wings are dropped lower into lower position because she's got a passenger compartment for cargo and passengers. Right. So what I did was I took the ICM kit and I simply cut the whole fuselage apart and kind of threw that out. and I just kept the wings and the tail appendage. And, I'm doing that sawing and cutting and throwing out while my wife walks by. So how do you explain you're kind of destroying a model kit you got as a gift? Well, you got to look at the light at the end of the tunnel. And it was useful when I merged it, when I mated it with the old Sanger vacuum form kit of the Key 57 Topsy. I just finished that one, I think last month.
Yep.
So
well, see, Harvey, that's the difference between you and me. I want to do Topsy, but I'll wait until ICM takes the wings to their KI-21 and does the new fuselage.
Well, guys, if you're doing this type of scratch building, you kind of got to be quick because you have no idea if a major manufacturer is going to release something. So you got to beat them to the line, right?
Well, or you are doing the sacrifice that gets us all a KI-57 Topsy from a manufacturer, because that's the way it works.
That's very true. Yeah, it gives them a kind of idea of, hey, this might be not a bad idea to produce in mainstream.
Well, let's change gears here a little bit, and then we can come back to some models maybe at the end.
Sure.
You just came back from I'll call it a vacation. I don't know if it was or not, but you've been to Japan to do some stuff. Won't we talk about that? Because I'm really interested.
Was this your first trip?
No, I've been to Japan about 3 times before. I go quite regularly. I just simply love the country.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Have you guys been or not yet?
I have been on Japanese soil for 3 hours.
Plane changeover.
No, yeah, I was there in 2018, late summer for work at my prior employer. So,
did you get to go out and see any shops, Mike?
I did. Where'd I go? It was in Yokohama.
Oh, in Yokohama,
it was in a shopping mall up on the 3rd floor. This big, was it Lalaport?
Yeah, it's in I think Aeon Mall or Lalaport.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Bees Hobbies.
Bees Hobbies, that's exactly it. That's it. That's the one. That's where I went. And it was funny because having not been over there, the company, they made sure I had a handler when I was over there because didn't want me to get lost. Want to make sure I got to where I needed to go. And ahead of time, I said, hey, if there's time, I would like to maybe check out something like this, right? And
it blew you away, right?
It did, but my he later came to Kentucky and was working at our facility here. He picked me up at the airport, and that's the first place we went.
Oh my God! Aren't you a hardcore steel modeler?
So that was fun. Yeah, it blew me away. I mean, just gosh, there was so much. And we couldn't spend a whole lot of time there. I don't know. I was there about an hour. But yeah, that's my only taste. But
well, it's a good taste and a good start. So
yeah,
but yeah, I've been a few times. Now, when I go back and visit, I do it in chunks. So you go back, you might do this part of Japan, another part. So this time was actually the longest I've been there. I did the middle part of Japan. So if you can kind of picture Japan as an island, right?
Yes.
Hokkaido is way up in the north, the big island, and the big city up there is Sapporo. And on the south is Kyushu. The big city down there is Kagoshima. And in the middle, you kind of have generally Osaka, Kyoto, Nagoya, Shizuoka. And then you, of course, a little bit up north, you have Tokyo, right? And so I focused this time on the territory between Osaka and Tokyo. And the only difference this time, instead of taking bullet trains or transit, I rented a car. And there's a bit of pros and cons of doing that in rural Japan, but it was an experience. And that allowed me to not only get around to the hobby stores, which I'll talk about in a sec, but a lot of really, really cool museums, seeing the most rarest historical subjects, battlefield sites, and of course, hobby shops. But yeah, it was for just about a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you went to the show, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to start with that?
Let's start with that.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've been to the show?
I have. It's the first time. Now, I went over with a small bunch of guys from Toronto. Two of them who are veteran guys that go to Shizuoka. They go every year, but they focus on the show. And they're both from Toronto, good friends of mine. And so we all decided if we're going to go this year, let's go together. So we kind of went as a group. Now, everyone knows about Shizuoka who's probably listening. It's a big, big hobby show. It is not a contest. It basically is a trade show, and it's kind of like Telford, where different groups, clubs display models. Now, it's the biggest show in Japan. I've been to a few shows in Asia. I would think it's the largest, but again, there's no contest there, and it's broken out into three basic stages. The first day is a trade show. It's just the people that have companies, they work together, they talk together about products, whatever. The second day is, I probably got the name wrong, but it's kind of like a student day where they invite kids from school. And I'll talk about this because the culture of scale modeling in Japan is very different than that of Canada, and I can say the United States. I don't know about Europe and other countries, but it's a different culture. I'll get to that in a minute. So they have a whole day for kids and students. And then the last 2 days are club displays like Telford. And what I've heard estimates, and it's probably true, some people put the number of models on those club displays around 12 to 15,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
If you were to go, and it's divided, the hall is divided into a massive trade show part, and then the club displays. There is a lot. Here's a tip. If you're going to go to Shizuoka, it's not always just there at that location. So I found out that there was another location literally a half an hour away that was the vendors. And there was no signage. Like it's like you find out by just asking people. And so it's kind of in three different sections, but the vendors are about a half hour away in a separate building. I don't know if that's overflow, but let's put it this way. If you were to go there and wanted to see everything meticulously, it would probably take you 3 to 4 days. There's no way you can make it through every display on one day. You can't do it. There's so many, right? So it's a big show, and I was honored to be asked. You meet everybody on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I met this fellow. He's a master modeler. His name is Hisao Sato, and he is one of the foremost aircraft modelers in Japan. He does articles for a lot of the scale model magazines over in Japan. So, we reach out, we talk through Facebook. His broken English is about as good as my broken Japanese, but it's enough to communicate. And he said, Harvey, when you come over, we're going to set you up with us because you have to kind of like go with a club. So if you want to go, you'll see the clubs there. If you want to bring your stuff, you have to try to get hooked up with a local club. And I was fortunate to get hooked up with the Tokushima model group. And Tokushima, Hisao Saito and his very talented crew are all from Tokushima, which is south of Osaka. And I brought a scratch-built Ki-55 Ida, 148th, and I brought that in, and I brought a small scratch-built Japanese tow truck, one of those tow vehicles,
Right.
motor tugs, and I was honored to have it amongst their club display. So it was a different kind of experience sitting with the Japanese guys, looking at the show and looking at the trade show.
Well, you talked about the modeling culture being different than either Canada or the U.S., which are somewhat similar.
Yes.
Can you describe how is the modeling culture different there?
Well, first off, what I saw is the culture of Japanese hobbies is they start the kids off young. They immerse their kids into the hobby very young. Give an example. I was over on a previous time visiting a Japanese ground self-defense base. And I was in there talking to the guys. And in the corner of my eye, I see they got this little store. And I said to them, what's that? They go, well, that's our little gift shop. Well, what's a gift shop doing on a Japanese army base? I'm in the Canadian Forces. There's no such thing. We don't have a gift shop on the Canadian Forces base. I don't. Well, you can tell me. Are there any gift stores with toys on a U.S. Army base or naval base or period?
Outside of the PX and outside of a base museum, I can't think of any.
Well, yeah. Well, they have their little. It's like a little store. in recruitment areas. And then they have these family days. We have them too. But instead of just opening up to, teenagers that might be joining, they offer free kits and show the kids how to build, guess what? Japanese ground self-defense force tanks and airplanes. It's their subjects. And the little kids, they get, and in fact, the Japanese self-defense force, they were at the Shizuoka show. And they brought an armored display, they had weapons displays, and they give little souvenirs to the kids. So they're there milking every opportunity to bring young kids into this hobby, right? So that's number one. Number two is I noticed driving a car, the coolest place are the Japanese highway stops because they got everything. It's the middle of nowhere, like it's nowhere. And you're driving, it's an oasis of restaurants. And one gas stop, which was in the middle of nowhere, I swear it's like 2 hours from Hamamatsu and like 5 hours from Nagoya. It's really far. And I walk in there and guess what's in the shelf? Tamiya kits and Tamiya shirts and Tamiya ties. Like, where do you see that on a highway stop in Canada or the US? Nowhere.
No.
Yeah.
Right? And then I was in a subway station in Shizuoka and walked along with my wife and said, what's that? And it was a bunch of tables set up with a bunch of people lined up, and they were building Gundam models on tables in the middle of the intercourse where subway stations connect. And so I walked up and I looked and I asked it, and they said it was free. And sign up, you have to wait in line. Everybody gets a turn. You might get, I don't know, they had enough chairs. So I presume everyone gets at least half an hour. There were parents there with the little kids. They get a free kit. It was sponsored by Bandai.
Oh, wow.
There's a big sign there. And it's just like, welcome, line up. And there was an actual lineup. And the tables were full. And this was at rush hour in a subway stop. That's what I mean by the biggest culture. I've never seen those things in Canada like that. And I don't think those things happen in New York Central, station.
It's like they've prevented other activities from encroaching on hobby time for kids.
Yes. Now, I'm not saying Japan doesn't have social issues. They certainly do. But certainly on the issues and of hobbies, they really go after the kids and show them, hey, this is really fun. And you can see it. There's lots of kids at the Shizuoka show, tons. And they're looking at models and they're being very respectful. They know not to touch them. And so that's the other thing. I think the second cultural thing I noticed, now this is only my unscientific observation, but when I was at the Shizuoka show, I was utterly shocked by the number of scratch-built and super detailed models. Now, I haven't been to Telford. I'm thinking about maybe going this fall, and I heard they're pretty good.
Yeah.
But the sheer amount of scratch builds and high detail versus simply, no offense to people who want to build them out of box, that's great too. I do that too. The ratio was overwhelmingly in super detail and in particular scratch built and in particular scratch built aircraft. Like, for example, I saw a 32nd scale Key 93, but that's obscene. I saw a 132nd Mert, like stuff like, oh my God. And I talked to the builders and they're old fashioned like me, the wood mold, vacuform, not a lot of 3D printing. They don't do a lot of 3D printing, and maybe I just didn't miss it. Like for that type of work, they do it by hand and they really go to lengths. In fact, I picked up a couple of kits that are exclusive to Japan. I think one was called Aerobase. Have you guys heard of that company?
I believe so.
They do cutaway aircraft,
right,
in photo etch. So I picked up Key 9 spruce in 48 scale. It's completely just the structural detail, but they like that level of detail, right? So it's kind of like George Lee models all over the place,
right?
And
they're very detail-oriented society.
Very, and so I asked them about contests, and a few of them said there's not a lot. They enjoy the camaraderie, the talking. The competition there is not big.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of shocked me because, I've been to, I think I'm well over a dozen IPMS nationals. It is the contest.
Right.
And the vendors, right? So, but there, they just seem to like to build and do detailed things. And this is my theory. Maybe it's because the pressure's off from a high-level competition that they could just do a bunch of scratch building and detailing and not worry about, this little rib on this frame is like 0.5 millimeter off, which would make you lose at the nets.
Well, and my understanding is Telford is somewhat that way.
Yes, that's my understanding too.
That the competition is a much smaller part, whereas the club displays are
the special interest groups and
right.
and all that.
Right, and the club tables, they have the club culture.
That is my understanding too, and that's exactly what Shizuoka. So if you do go to Shizuoka, don't expect a show. It's exactly how you described it, Dave. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you: when you walked through the manufacturer's area, did you see one or two things that were coming out new that excited you?
Yeah, actually.
All right,
okay,
tell us.
Off the top of my head, I not only saw, but I actually touched it. I was touching and feeling the new Tamiya M36 tank.
Yep.
So they had that there. And fine molds, they've got the new 48-0, but they've actually got two new 72nd scale A6M50.
Yes, that David wants badly.
Yeah. And the cool thing about them is Dave, these A6M5s are an earlier version,
right,
without the intakes. So they're kind of hitting on different things, but I saw that as well. And I saw the new Fujimi 144th scale Yamato.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, they're coming out with a 144th scale
144th scale battleship Yamato.
Yeah, so it was there.
How big is that?
Oh my God, it's 6 to 8 feet, something like that.
That's what I've got to say. It's got to be, even in 144th scale, that thing has to be between 6 and 8 feet long. It's
actually huge. They had one at the show, and they also had one. I don't know who did it. They actually had a built one at the Johnson Hobby Shop in Osaka, and they had one there. And I saw it there and go, what the heck is this? Now, I humbly did a 1/200 Yamato for fine scale.
Right.
But this thing, it's massive, and it's like really detailed.
Well, I've seen the 200 scale kit, and it's massive.
It's great.
So I cannot imagine a 144 scale.
No.
Well, what does something like that cost? Did you look?
Yes.
Okay.
You got about $8,000.
How much?
$8,000.
$8,000?
Yes, sir.
Holy.
$8,000. Yeah.
You want two, Dave?
Yeah, I'll take.
Take two?
Can I get a discount if I buy two?
Yeah.
I'm sure you could take your passport and get like a 20% discount. That would really lower it.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. Now I honestly don't know what's involved, but apparently, from what I've learned, is it's not your traditional kit. It is a kit that comes in components that some of it are pre-built. I don't. It's kind of have you guys ever heard of the Japanese kits from Hachette? They do these. You buy them and subscribe to them. They're only in Japan again. So they do a 1/100 Japanese E400 submarine, and it's insane. It's got light and sounds. So if you build it, you can also sit there and throw a bunch of switches and it just yells dive, dive, dive in Japanese. So, you get nothing else to do, right, on those lonely evenings. And that, I think, if you threw in and bought every module, because there's about 160 sets to that kit,
right,
would cost you maybe $1,500. But this one's, I heard it's $8,000.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
That's so you bought one and you're shipping it back.
Yeah,
right?
I took it on the carry-on. Yeah, in the cabin. Yeah.
He wrote it home.
I was going to say that's probably a checked item, Harvey.
Yeah, must be. Now, what's really odd is the Japanese companies must know something. They got the market, right? So what now I don't know how this is going to sell, but their best sellers by far is Gundam. Okay?
Right.
Gundam just dwarfs everything else in Japan. I was over at the Odaiba Gundam base and the stores. You know, with all due respect to military modelers, it dwarfs it. But if you go to, now we're getting into the stores. Maybe that's a good segue.
It is a good segue.
Yeah.
Right. So, Mike, you went to B Hobby, right?
Yeah.
Yokohama.
Yeah.
If the folks that are listening, pretty simple. If you want to do Japanese hobby shops, if you're in Tokyo, there's one neighborhood called Akihabara. Okay, Akihabara has probably 10 to 12 hobby shops, all within the vicinity of a few blocks, and they're all good. They I don't know how the competition works, but if you're going to Japan, just take these notes if you're listening, the listeners who want to know. There's a few hobby stores that are musts, and one of them is called Leonardo. Now, Leonardo has 3 separate stores, all within walking distance of each other. I can't figure it out. They're like 2 to 3 blocks within each other, but they have 3 separate locations. They're all the same. They're all, if you're into vintage and new kits, that's where you go, because you'll find stuff that you will never see.
The pictures you put on Facebook of that shop.
Yeah.
And now, are most of the Japanese shops like the ones you see in China where, you know, you walk sideways?
Yes.
They're all very cramped.
Very cramped, very narrow. Now, I've been to hobby stores in Singapore, I've been in hobby shops in Hong Kong. The only difference, in fact, I've been to hobby shops in Europe. And, you know, like, I'm not knocking any other country. I got to put that preamble there, right? Every country. I found some super hobby stores in Paris. But Japan, they seem to, okay, their philosophy is, we're going to open up a store and we're just going to fill it with kits until your senses go wild. And so the difference is, not only are the aisles narrow, but the stock just blows your mind. And the third thing is they have ultra rare kits or kits that have been out of production for years, and you find them there.
Yes. There was one in one of your pictures that, had I been able to get there, I would have grabbed.
Which one was that?
It's the Aki firebrand.
Yes. There's a few people that asked me about that.
Yeah.
A few. That was at a place called Gannett Hobby. So that's in Kobe, and that's near Osaka. So there's, I mean, I can't rattle off all the stores, but Gannett's a big hangout for aircraft modelers in the Osaka area. And the other place is Hobbyland in Osaka. But if most people are heading to Tokyo, just go to Akihabara. Because, yeah, you'll find stuff like that firebrand. And I picked up a 132nd Fisher Models Ryan STM. Like, they're long gone.
Right.
Because Paul Fisher.
Of the fire.
Yeah, right. I picked up I forget who makes it. I picked up a 1-to-1 scale throttle quadrant made out of resin for a Maki 202. Like, where do you get stuff like that?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I noticed from the pictures you posted on Facebook that not only were these hobby shops crammed full of models, but you had everything from new run Hasegawa or Tamiya to some of the most obscure cottage resin vacuform.
Yes.
It just stuff that you're like,
you didn't know existed.
Right. Either didn't know existed or had heard rumor of at one time, but have never actually seen the kit.
Guys, you hit it on the nail. Mike, you said that you thought look, I'm not bragging, but I think I kind of know what's being released. But that's totally false when you get there. Go, oh my God, I've never seen this before.
Well, I would get in the 90s when the Japanese magazines, they're like quasi modeling, and then they'd have features on real aircraft. I like Model Fan, and then there's one called Panzer, and there's one those magazines.
Koku Fan, right?
Mm-hmm. They would always have like a product area in the back, and there'd be all this really crazy kits and conversions for, you know, like Russian tanks or whatever.
Yeah.
But all of it was completely, unless you had a very good relationship with somebody in Japan who liked the same stuff you did.
Right.
It was unobtainable.
Yes. I'll give you an example. They had a 1/35th conversion set to convert a Chiha to a Chiha recovery vehicle. Like, that's insane. It's resin. Where do you get that? Like, where do you get that?
A Chiha recovery vehicle.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Like, really. And so, I did ask a couple of the shop owners for the rare stuff, and a lot of them, so a lot of hobby stores there, they don't do a lot of mail order. And I think that's why Scott picked up at Hobby Link Japan. He kind of filled that void, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of local stores, because English over there, without due respect, a lot, especially in the rural areas, nobody speaks English in the rural areas. Not a lick of it. And even in the large cities, not a lot of English. So be prepared. A lot of hobby shop owners don't speak at all. So, but you find, so it makes it maybe difficult for them to do international business. Of course, the written script's different, right?
Right.
So maybe it's that. But they did say that they don't do a lot of international. But then I said, what happens if you have the money and I just want to buy this? And a lot of them go, no, we don't ship out. They just want to do it for the local economy, like these really weird conversions that you only see there. An example is I saw a series of decals that the name slips me. I've never seen them before. They do 1/72nd German, Japanese, Italian aircraft. They do some 48 stuff. I bought a set, but I haven't tried it yet. They're apparently vinyl. I don't know what that means. But when I look at it, it's got you kind of like rub it on and put a pencil. I'm not sure of it. I've never seen any of those, and I'm going to try it. But you look at the company, go on the web, it's all Japanese. I can't get them anywhere but there. There's a lot of things that you can only buy in Japan. So that's why I think the trek over there to stores is just a paradise, because you are always surprised.
And that's what I've heard. That's always been the story that you hear, is that, there are a fair number of models out of Japan that we get and we can buy and all. But the story I've always heard is that there's a ton of models that they make that they don't export at all.
No,
and
they don't.
All local consumption.
Yes.
It's for the local market. Yep. And even if there is a market for it overseas, they don't even bother with it. They don't
bother. Absolutely. Absolutely, Dave. And what I found interesting is when I went over, the stores, for the most part, they're all there. So obviously they're doing a business to stay afloat. Like they're in downtown Tokyo.
Right.
So
it's not cheap.
No, they must be doing well. And yeah, they just seem to have so much in just inventory. And then they have the weird stuff. And then the new releases, I find, you see new releases that, wait a minute, I never even saw this new release in North America. It may be a basic Kasagaki, but I never saw that one with those decals. And it says limited edition. So, for example, I bought a 48th Zero A6M2, and it's all cutaway. It is 3D parts as well as photo etch, and you literally build. It's by MID Models, Japan, and you build a cutaway Zero. Like where do you get stuff? I've never seen that in North America.
So I have to ask, when you're over there and you're seeing all of these things that you can't get here, how do you keep yourself from just filling a couple of suitcases?
Maybe he did.
And going broke.
I did buy an extra suitcase. My wife and I bought an extra suitcase.
Good for you.
Well, here's the cardinal rule. If you're going to go over, maybe make it useful for your listeners, you can go over and get a Tamiya kit for really cheap. To give you an example, the one comes to mind, you can get like a 1/72nd P51 Mustang from Tamiya for, I don't know, $12 US, right? But I wouldn't advise you do that, because you can buy it over here. Okay, you're going to pay a little, because everything takes space in your luggage. So I would only buy really rare stuff, number one. Number two is get rid of any excess packaging. This is an art guy. guys, you got to go to the hotel and you got to put this stuff through your mind. It's a science. So guys, when you go to the hotel, you get rid of any excess packaging. You put kits into one box. So that's another thing to save space. You can also create your own mailing labels so that if you buy a big kit, you go to the local post office, you mail it back to yourself. That's another way you can do it. But I only focus on uber rare kits, break them down, and I think I ended up filling maybe 2 suitcases. But yeah, it's hard. You got it. And books are worse because they're heavy.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, that'd be Dave's Achilles heel.
Yes,
and Dave, if you guys get to Tokyo, and if the listeners are listening, you go to one bookstore. It's in Akihabara, and it's right beside the big camera store, Yobadashi Camera. And go to Yobadashi Camera because they got the hugest hobby selection in the camera store. Like, it's all in there. Just a block away is Senseido Books. The whole floor is modeling and military books. And they produce stuff that you've never seen here. I got a whole bunch of stuff on British armor in Japanese service. Like, they have the whole line of J-Tank, which is a periodic magazine on Japanese World War II tanks. You can only get them in Japan, and they had most of the volumes at the bookstore there. I went to see, in fact, maybe like the museums. I'm kind of going back and forth, but one of the museums at Gifu, which is outside of Nagoya, has a restored Key 61 Tony, fully restored. And they're selling the very rare technical books on the Key 61 at the museum store for like $20. And right? You can't even find them on the web.
Here.
No, and if you do find them here, they're 80 to 100.
Exactly.
They're $20 at the gift store there.
Oh, you're killing me.
Yeah, I bought those books. So you got to be selective. Don't buy the stuff you can get here. Just go for the hard stuff. Now, things aren't cheap, but if you want it, it's there. Right? So the cardinal rule is, if you want rare stuff, you're going to have to pay for it. The new stuff, especially things made in Japan, Hasegawa, Tamiya, really cheap. Really cheap. So,
did you have any trouble getting any of this back into the country?
No.
Good.
No. Well, the one thing I do stay away from is obviously paints and those things. But it's funny you asked, Dave, because I was at a store and I wanted to buy this. So take Tamiya. Tamiya offers some products there that somehow I've never seen, at least in Canada. They've got their own masking fluid. They've got a huge line of airbrushes that you never see over here. So I picked up an airbrush, but they also have this. They have some putty, which I think you can get here, but you got big tubes that you can buy over there. But then when I bought it, they knew as a tourist, said they won't sell it to you because you can't bring that on the plane. So there are limitations of what you can buy, right?
At least they told you.
At least they told me. And if you are going over to buy, bring your passport, because a lot of the big stores like Yobadashi Camera give you discounts, sometimes like 10, 20%. So bring your passport.
Really?
And they will give.
Oh, yeah. They gave me a deal at Bee's Hobby.
Yeah, there you go.
I wonder what
it's courtesy.
Is it just, I guess that's the culture.
Mm-hmm.
You're a guest here. We're going to give you a little something extra. That's nice.
It's like it's like when Stephen Lee went to Scale Reproductions.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
What happened there?
He got the
friends and family discount.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, Harvey, if you come down, I'll take you to Scale Reproductions and we'll get you the friends and family discount.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Although it sounds like you acquired plenty to build for the next few years.
Well, who doesn't, right? Like, and now my collection is focused on really rare stuff, and even then I have enough. But I don't build as much for like national level contests like I used to, because it takes you time, right? And even for scratch building, I talked to a couple of scratch builders. We're on a different topic, but a lot of them, they may or may not go to the big shows because scratch building, like, it takes you time. And then if you apply simple fit and finish rules to a scratch built model, it's pretty hard to do. So I'm pretty fast now, like having done 5 already, but 1 a month. And I've got about 3 almost ready and finished. That's, I'm pumping them out. So,
Well, one last thing I wanted to mention, you talked about selling your completed works.
no.
So you clearly don't have once the fun for you clearly is doing it. And once it's done, you don't seem to have too strong of an attachment to the finished product.
Yeah, you're probably right. I do have large display cases in my house, but if somebody wants to buy something, I will sell it.
Mm.
And for example, I have a regular customer. I built F1 1/12 cars for this customer. He doesn't build models, but he always asks me to build 1/12. Now, I can't do them all the time because they take time.
Oh, yeah.
But and now I'm not a huge fan of building for clients. The subject matter has to resonate with me. So this guy is a huge Ayrton Senna fan. Okay, like
Yep.
he's got everything on Ayrton Senna. So I'm working on he asked me to build, I think it was a Tamiya McLaren MP
Right.
4 or whatever it was, which was Senna's car. I did that. And then he says, Harvey, he drove a Lotus 98T, right? Is there any kid of a Lotus 98T? And I go, well, if you want 1/12, there is, and it's by a company called MFH. And if you know MFH, they're out of Japan.
I
And
was
if
going
you
to
know
say.
those kits, they go for around $2,000.
Oh, yeah.
So I told him that, and he goes, "Get it." I go, "Okay." And I'm looking at it right now, and I'm working on it. So I bought it, and I'm working on it. But so am I kind of like, it's going to be there in my house. But honestly, if somebody appreciates it, I'm happy to sell it. Look, and what's going to happen to look? I don't want to be macabre, but the day comes. What's going to happen with all our models? I'd rather
Right.
have somebody enjoy it, or it's in some sort of museum or
Right.
something, and that just makes me happy. So I have no qualms to keep these forever. I do love them. I love that 172nd sub, but it's got a great home, and that keeps me happy.
All right. Well, that sounds like a pretty awesome trip, Harvey.
Yes.
It was. Now I know we're kind of ending it, but if you guys do go over or your listeners go over, also don't miss the museums. You got to go there because it's not just the hobby stores, but if you go, there are some places that you should go, like the air bases, Hamamatsu and Gifu being the 2 large air bases with museums. Down south, there's the Chiran Kamikaze Museum, and I went to some battlefield sites where one of them is Sekigahara, which is their Gettysburg. And that was a big samurai battle way back in the 1700s.
Interesting.
So you can see the beautiful museum, beautiful. So to end it, it's a whole experience, right? It's the Shizuoka show. It's the breadth of hobby stores. It's the history of that country. It's a beautiful country, very polite people. And it's one of my regular go-tos. But I do want to get to Telford, and I'm planning that one.
Well, you've got to promise if you do go to Telford that you'll come back on after you've done Telford.
Sure.
Tell us about your Telford experience and going to Hannett's, and then compare and contrast.
That's a great idea. You're on. That's a great idea. So, yeah.
Well, they're both island countries. It would be a great compare and contrast.
Yeah, and even in Canada, in September, I was asked to visit the guys in Alberta, so I'm heading out to Calgary. They've got a military show. So, I'm trying to get around, and I want to get to the Malaysian show. They just had theirs, and Taiwan's got a big. So I like to get out there and just meet new people, and because when you'll find that the style varies by countries.
Yeah, well,
right?
there's a big one in China at Shanghai. Promise China.
Yeah, I've heard, and Hong Kong has a show. I'd love to go to those.
Yeah,
right? Because I think the hobby, it's a very solitude hobby to begin with, and if you have the ability, take advantage. And I'm lucky. I have my health and I have everything, and get out there and meet people. Because if you are happy building your basement by yourself, go to it. But to me, the other half of the hobby is meeting people, listening to you guys, listening to your other modelers that are on that's the whole breadth of the hobby.
That's what Mike and I have both been preaching pretty much since we started the podcast, was the fact that there is a whole side to this hobby that if you don't go to shows, forget competing,
Yeah.
but if you don't go to shows and don't go to local modeling clubs,
Right.
that you're missing out on a whole part of modeling.
Absolutely, Dave. Like I met you guys, and
Yep.
it's not just social media. You're right. It's going and meeting people face to face.
Yeah,
It is. Especially somebody, it's really fun when it's somebody you've met on social media and maybe have communicated with for sometimes even years.
Yeah.
And you've never ever met them face to face.
Nope.
Now the video component to what we can do now bridges that a little better, but wasn't that long ago before we didn't have any of this.
exactly.
And you would just have their text or maybe you had an audio call every now and then, but
that's it.
That's it.
When I met Hisao in Japan, it's like we're brothers now. Like just because we share this passion, and there's a language barrier. I between our broken languages, but you have that common passion, right? And so you're right. That's what it's about. And I love getting out to meet. It's not to me. It's not about the bling or the award or anything. No, because that just sit in a box. It's the people you meet.
Yep.
And you guys got so many episodes on you. It's good for you.
We're halfway through our 6th year, so
wow,
no end in sight either. So we're having too much fun.
That's right.
Yeah. So but I whatever you guys want, I'm a call away, and
that's great because we're gonna have you back for something. I'm sure.
Well,
and to maybe have some fodder for that later. You mentioned what you're working on now. I don't know how far in advance you plan your projects, but what are a couple things you're itching to get to that haven't even seen the workbench yet? Yeah,
well, one of the things that I am kind of like scoping out now is I want to do an LCT Landing Craft 593, and I'm kind of scoping out the drawings. It's kind of like half wood and resin. That's going to be LCT, not to get into details, but if you see a photo of LCT 593, she has the fuselage of a Sterling bomber on it. And I thought, well, that's different. So I'm kind of scoping out that. I do have a lot of projects. Now, look, I don't want to gloat, but everything I start, I do finish. There's seldom anything that I don't finish. And so when I'm looking at my list of to-dos, I've got about maybe 8 that are all underway. I don't just work on one. I swap back and forth. I will get them all done. I'm honored and happy to talk about anything you want. You just let me know. I will do whatever you want, say whatever you want, talk for how long, whatever you want, 6-hour one or 6-minute. I don't care.
Well, we're glad you're enjoying your retirement.
Yep. And I hope you make it to Telford.
I do too. We are scoping it. That's in, I think, November.
It is.
Yeah.
Are you coming down to Virginia for the IPMS National Convention?
I can't. Only because I'm out in Quebec and Ottawa for just kind of a trip and another show. But yeah, I'd love to get back down to Louisville. I'm a frequent participant with the Cleveland guys, the Buffalo guys, right?
Yeah.
The Rochester guys.
We won't hold that against you.
I even went out to OrangeCon out in California.
Yeah.
That was a great show. So yeah, it's just a matter of trying to get my time to all these places.
Yeah.
Well, if it's Heritage Con, that's where we'll see you.
Yes, definitely.
All
and
right.
If you've got time, happy to take you around. You let me know.
All right.
Well, Harvey, thanks for joining us tonight. And it's a pleasure talking to you. And it's really, really interesting to hear about your trip to Japan.
And I'm honored to be here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's really interesting, Dave.
It was really interesting to get his perspective, having just been there and having been there several times, about how different the hobby is in Japan than it is other places.
Sure.
Well, I do hope he goes to England for Scale Model World, and would love to hear from him and hear a compare and contrast between that experience, the U.S. Nationals, which he's been to before, and going to contests and stuff in Japan.
Bases by Bill is back with quality display bases that enhance any model. From U.S. and Japanese wooden carrier decks to custom-sized cherry hardwood bases, Bases by Bill display bases are available for any type of model and for any size. Oh, and have you heard? Bases by Bill is now a U.S. reseller for one-man army high-definition paint masks. These masks bring amazing detail to your model, even maintenance stencils. They have to be seen to be believed. And all one-man army products include free shipping. Check basesbybill.com to see the products. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs.
Well, Dave, it's the Benchtop halftime report.
Yep.
Lay it on me, brother. What have you been doing?
My bench has been active, not quite as active as I'd want, but I have been concentrating on the Bearcats for the group or the group entry in Hampton. They are now just recently in primer. So, and all of the peripherals are already painted and everything. So it's just a matter of now having primed. I want to hit them with a quick wet sand. Then it's overall glossy blue, which is, let's face it, not going to be too difficult. And I'm pretty sure I have enough glossy blue Mr. Color to get me to through the whole project. And then once that's on, it's already glossed, so I don't even have to gloss before I put the decals down. I get the decals down, and 5 weeks should get me there. It may be off-gassing as we're driving to Hampton, but 5 weeks should get me finished with these models.
Well, with that glossy blue, I've got a F8 or F9.
Yep.
Was it Panther?
Yeah.
Cougar or something? I can't remember.
Right.
Naval plane from the Korean War.
F8, F9F is the Panther.
Yeah,
F8.
F9, F5, the one with the long fuselage.
Right. Yeah. That's the...
That I want to do. And unfortunately, the Matchbox kit's the only one of that one in 72nd scale.
It is.
But I was wondering how and maybe since the group project, I don't know. I won't say you don't care as much, but maybe you don't. Do you think that level of gloss on the 72nd scale plane is good, or would you want to dial that back a little bit?
I'll do one of two things. Either I'll leave, since I've got 2 entries in the group build, I may, when I've finished decaling and weathering and everything, I may hit one with a gloss final coat and one with a satin final coat just to get some variation and see what the two look like, just to give the display some variation. I think you can do either. I've seen them as high gloss sea blue, even weathered, and they look good. And yet I've seen other ones where they come along and they have really toned down the gloss and not so much as to make it dull or flat, but say satiny, and both look realistic. So I may try one of each. I've also got a French bird that I'm building along with it, and that one may get a true flat because those things were really hard worn in Vietnam. I'll be interested to see. I'm going to play around with it. And again, because I quote unquote don't care, I don't mean I don't care. It's just because it's part of a group build, it's going to blend in with a whole bunch of other models. So I feel a little bit more relaxed about taking a chance.
Sure.
And doing something that I might not normally do if I was building a standalone model. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Well, we'll have to make a point to make the rounds in the small scale tables and see what other folks have done. And I'm sure I'll come out of there liking one or the other. So,
or maybe both.
Maybe.
Yep. So, but everything else has been shoved aside to get that done. All the props and wheels and gear doors and everything else are done. So it is just finishing a light, quick wet sand on the primer, and then straight on to the gloss, and we go from there. So I'm I'm cutting it close, but I'm going to make it. Just like I did with the LCM last year.
I'll rah while I'm at your house this week.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I'll let you see them. So I know what you've been doing, or at least part of what you've been doing, because you've been posting a lot on the dojo, and I kind of like what you've been doing.
Well, what I've been doing is working through the KV85 details now, and honestly, I think I really underestimated
I was going to ask
the amount of work that
did.
was going to take. Yeah, I did. Not so much in complexity. None of it's been particularly hard once I figured out how I was going to do something, but it's just a lot to do.
Yeah.
More than I thought. And some of has been a little tedious. You know, I'm going to pose the driver's visor open. So I had to work out how that was going to go together, because I was not interested in the way the kit parts actually went together to make that feature like it was.
Right.
And the kit visor didn't fit all that well anyway. So I've used the visor out of the trumpeter kit.
Well, what I really liked was the wire that's next to the machine gun.
Yeah,
it's like a harness.
Well, sort of. That there's a metal conduit that basically one end covers a hole in the hull roof that the electrical wires come up through and into the tube. Then it comes down over the front of the front plate, and the electrical cable for the horn and the headlight are in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me back up. There's a main power line that comes through that conduit, and then it comes down to this little button shaped thing on the front of the tank that's basically a junction box. So the one comes into there and it splits out into two, and the two go to the light and the other one goes to the horn.
I was going to ask you what that little button thing was.
Yeah, it's just a junction. It's where the line goes from one feed to two.
Gotcha.
So, gosh, what I use some brass or copper wire out of a old model railroad power switch solenoid for a turnout or switch track. One of those has about 800 miles of wire on it. So I've had one of those since my teen years. I've not even used a tenth of it, I don't think, but it's really, really fine wire.
Yeah.
The conduit's just a piece of evergreen rod that I drilled the end out of to get a hollow end where the wires come out. What else did I do? The little junction box thing was punched out of styrene, and then it's got like a rivet or fastener in the middle of it from some kind of, I can't remember, one of the model railroad suppliers, nuts and bolts sets, rivet sets. So got all that on there. I'm trying to think what else I've done. That's about it. I'm probably fortunate I haven't broken the headlight off, because it's on a really, really finely molded bracket that's molded to the light bulb, the light housing. So,
well, hopefully it will survive the whole building process.
Well, it ought to look good when it's done, because the lens for the headlights is actually a clear part with the crosshatch texture molded into the one side of it. So that ought to be a nice part. So, now I'm hoping to work my way back from there. I've got I think that front plate's done now. I probably won't actually put the visor into the opening of the armor in the front until I start painting the thing. But really, that's about all I've gotten done, and just chipped away at it a little bit the nights I can get down here, and it's making progress. I thought I was going to go blind after that little wiring harness thing, man. Jeez. That was small. I haven't worked that small in a long time. I'm out of practice.
I hear you. Well, we need to build faster.
You work on anything else?
Nope, that's it, man.
Well, what are you hoping to get back to after the national convention?
Finish the SAM and the BT7. Both are going to get finished after the Nats.
And F8.
Well, and the F8 too.
Come on, man.
But it's in third place behind the other two.
Gosh, but it was started before either one of them.
I know.
Hustad built a BT7 inside yours.
Yes, I know he did.
And put it in a diorama.
Of course, he models 7 hours a day.
At least.
And no matter how many hours you give me, mine's not going to look as good as his.
Plastic Model Mojo is brought to you by Squadron. Head on over to squadron.com for the latest in kits and accessories, all at a great price and with great service. Are you a modeler on the go? Check out the Squadron mobile app for your Apple or Android device for easy shopping from just about anywhere. Squadron, adding to the stash since 1968.
They've been announcing a fair amount of new kits coming out. See anything you like?
I've got several faves. Now, I've gotten a little diverse with my faves, just stuff I think's interesting, whether I'm actually going to buy it or build it. It's a completely different topic. Got 3 of those and a yawn.
Well, I've got 2 faves and an I'm not sure.
Well, who's first?
I'll take it.
Sure.
This one's 35th scale and it's armor. And
Okay.
I don't know that it's a fave, but I don't know. I want to hear what you think about it. A company I've never heard of before called Zimi, Z-I-M-I,
Yep.
has announced a 35th scale Martyr 1 and flat car. And I like the way the Martyr 1 looks. I've never heard of this company Zimi before. I have no idea. And it's interesting that they release it as a joint product with a flat car, but I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I'll tell you, that was my yawn.
Okay.
Zimi also made that quad Bofors, U.S. Navy quad Bofors kit. So I've got that. And they make a couple other things. This one's a yawn for me because I know why they released it like this.
Why?
It's because they picked up the old Panda Models Martyr 1 tooling. And
Gotcha.
It's a distant second next to the Tamiya kit.
Gotcha.
And they're not going to sell me of those solo anymore. They're just not.
That explains everything. I did not realize that was somebody else's mold.
So, it's an interesting combination, I guess, but I don't know. For me, the tank on flat car thing's kind of run its course for me as an interest. I probably have in the stash a 35th scale resin German heavy flat car back there somewhere.
Yeah, because that's how they got released first.
Yeah, so now there's more than one in plastic.
So, Mike, what's your first fave?
It's one kit from a new company out of Ukraine. It's Spalaha. I don't know if it's Spala or Spallet. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but they're a 3D print company doing some 35th scale stuff. And the one that's interesting is an MT-12 100 millimeter anti-tank gun. Now, this was a post-war Soviet anti-tank gun.
Is that the upgrade of the BS-3 that was during World War II?
I don't know if the two are related because it's a smoothbore gun.
Oh, okay.
So it's all issuance with a lot of third world armies, and then most of the Warsaw Pact.
Gotcha.
Even after it was phased out of Soviet service, I just thought it was a really interesting offering from a newer company. So again, a 3D print. I don't know if it's going to interest me that much, but as far as a subject, I think it's one that's not been done. I don't know. I don't know if there's one of these in like the trumpeter line or not. I don't really know, but it's a neat looking little gun.
Yeah. I love anti-tank guns. There's something about them.
What you got next?
Next one is one that I was aware of, but you pointed out to me. BPK, Big Plane Kits. They do an entire 737 series. And they've got a 737-700 in 72nd scale that they have now released with the newer Blue Southwest Airlines scheme. They had actually done one of the earlier 737s in Southwest in what was called the Peanut scheme, the brown scheme that Southwest had forever. And then Southwest, a number of years ago, switched over to the blue scheme, which is very attractive in my opinion. And so they've released a kit of it. My wife flew on this airplane a whole lot in her career. And I got to say, I'm probably at some point going to pick one up because I want to do an airliner. And doing that one would be really nice. It'd make a nice display piece with all of her Southwest memorabilia. So I may have to pick that one up.
I thought you might be interested now.
Yes. Yep. So you're next.
I can't even read my own writing. New wear.
Uh-huh.
It's a in 1 to 144 scale.
Yep.
It's a Titan II rocket with as the launch vehicle for the dinosaur.
I know the one.
I don't know much about this company.
I've got several of their kits. They're
how are they?
Good models. They're good. I mean, they're not, modern injection molded, and they are helped by the fact that they are modeling, a lot of round shapes and things like that. No, the new wear stuff is very good. In fact, if you talk to Mike Idacavage, I'll bet you he'll tell you that he likes a lot of their stuff.
Well, maybe he'll chime in and let us know.
Okay.
But I thought this one was interesting because the rocket certainly had some fairly colorful markings.
Yep. And the dinosaur was just a cool concept.
We got another one?
Well, yes. And this one is my I don't know.
Oh, it wasn't the Martyr one?
No, the Martyr one was going to be, I don't know about this kit, but it looks interesting.
Okay.
This is a company called Emboss, EMBOSS. Never heard of them before. And they are making, in 35th scale, a decal for, do you know what a bead seat cover is?
Yeah.
Like you see in a lot of taxis and...
Yep. Like half the dang taxis in China had those things.
Exactly. They are making 35th scale, which I think is interesting. Would have thought they would do it in one of the car scales, but 35th scale bead seat cover decals in like 3 or 4 different patterns.
Now, are they generic or are they kit specific?
No, they're generic.
Interesting.
And like I said, it's in 3 or 4 different patterns. And just when you see them, you look at them and you go, oh, I know what that is. It pops right out you. They look like what they're supposed to be. But that's just, to me, such an interesting little detail that a company would actually manufacture that. I found it very surprising.
Maybe we've reached the pinnacle.
Maybe we have. No, the pinnacle will be when somebody 3D prints it in 35th scale.
And the beads actually rattle. Oh, brother.
So do you have any more?
I do. I've got one more fave.
Yeah, well, I'm done, so you go.
Well, Mini Art's been ripping through the RSOs.
Yes, they have.
They finally boxed one in plastic that I don't think has been done before. Maybe there's a photo etch set out there to do this, but because normally you only see these stowed on the sides of an RSO tractor, but the big stamp metal snowshoes.
Yeah.
Well, they've kitted a version now that you can actually apply those to the tracks.
Wow.
And it looks pretty ridiculous with those things on it because they span a couple of lengths and they're just really wide. And they're just these thin sheet metal stampings.
Right.
So, yeah, it looks like some kind of moon buggy with those things on it.
Well, the RSO is odd looking to begin with.
Well, this doesn't help it. A high time somebody did it. I have to wonder. I don't know if someone's done those maybe in photo etch before. But then I don't know that they've ever done them even in photo etch to actually apply to the tracks. They were just to enhance the stowed versions of the things.
Yeah.
Somebody let me know if I'm off base or if I'm correct. I don't really remember, but that's the end of my faves and yawns, Dave.
All right. Mike, we've reached almost the end of the episode, and I am not quite done with my modeling fluid, but it's getting there. And Braumaster Krampusnacht Schwarzbier 5.0 alcohol by volume. It's out of Canada, out of Braumeister Brewing Company. I want to thank Evan for the beer. I'm not a Schwarzbier fan, and I'm not fond of the maltiness that you get with a lot of very dark beers. This is reminiscent in many ways of Guinness, but it's not quite as thick and not quite as creamy. But it does have the extra carbonation that you associate with the Guinness. So, all in all, not bad. Thank you, Evan, and thank you to Mr. Grisbean for the glass and the T-shirt. How was the 1920?
After not having it for a very long time, again, I had to get past the heat because it's 100 and something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
110.
Like 110 or 112 proof.
Right. So, but once you're there, man, it's got a lot of really interesting flavor to it. Yeah. I remember how much I enjoyed it.
Yep.
Real quickly.
Yeah. It really does have, a lot of times once you get a bit above a certain level of alcohol, the heat from the alcohol is all you taste. But the 1920 has some really great flavors to it. It's not just drinking hot alcohol.
Well, I'd be curious how Don Gilman's flight went and what he came out of there liking better than the others. So let me know, Don.
Yeah.
Either comment in your thread you put on the dojo or send us an email.
Now, we truly are at the end of the episode. So, Mike, do you have any shout-outs or anything you want to mention?
Like we normally do, Dave, I want to shout out all the folks who've taken it upon themselves to help Plastic Model Mojo out through their generosity. We've had a flurry of activity in this regard, and we really appreciate it because, again, we're still chipping away at the website, and we got a little ways to go before we have anything new to launch. So all this is really helping us out. Robert Morales, Michael Grisman, who you mentioned already, and William Summer have come on board as new patrons. So that's great. We really thank you guys a lot. And I sent them all a message thanking them. And then we got kind of a mystery one too. Hopefully the person who did this can reach out. They're from particularly, a famous namesake chapter down in South Texas. And this email address has gotten handed around by a couple of people when I was doing a little Google searching. So I'm not sure the context of this one, but again, it's greatly appreciated. And then finally, Dave Pillay has kind of amped up what he was doing before, so he's helping us out a little more than he was. So really appreciate it, folks. It's going a long way. The nest egg's growing a little bit, so we can finish out this website and going to bring you some good stuff, and just helps keep the whole train moving down the tracks.
Yeah,
and we appreciate it very much. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to second that.
What about you, man?
Well, I want to shout out Mr. Grisman again for the T-shirt and the beer glass. Always appreciated. In addition, I want to recommend another YouTube channel. The guys, Al Murray and James Holland, who do the We Have Ways podcast, have a World War II YouTube channel. And they're doing little short YouTubes. They did one that I posted on the dojo about the ME 163, and then they just dropped another one on 5 reasons why the Sherman was the best all-around tank of World War II. And it's really great content. It's short, it's digestible, 10, 15-minute YouTube episodes, and really fun little watches. So I highly recommend those.
Anything else?
Nothing else for me. How about you?
Nope. That's it until 4th of July, my friend.
All right. Can't wait to see you.
Until then, so many kits,
so little time.